Hello and welcome. This video is focused on how to make documents more accessible. It is approximately 47 minutes in total, but is divided by topic, which you will see here. To make it easier to navigate, you'll also see the approximate times where each topic begins. Thank you for reviewing, and thanks to Jim McEwen and Kate Wiley for leading the session.
So on the screen, you can see the types of things that we're going to cover today. What I'm going to talk about is students, because that's our focus at Niagara College. And you may or may not have had students in your class with letters of accommodation, but not everybody has a letter of accommodation that has a disability. And there are obvious disabilities, and then there are invisible disabilities. And whether you are aware of it or not, there may be people who have trouble with reading in your class and different things along those lines. So there are definitely students that this accessibility of documents can help that are not just blind or have vision problems, but students who have cognitive disabilities like learning disabilities. A well-organized document goes a long way for them. So when you are, if you are a student who has a first-year class, or sorry, if you are a professor that has a first-year class, you never know who's going to be in your class. So making your documents accessible right from the get-go is really a great way to go. And then reusability of your documents. So if you make a document that you want to use in separate years, again, you can't tell who's going to be in your class. So if we make them accessible right from the start, that's a great way to go. So I'm going to jump right into it because there's a lot to cover. So when we create a Microsoft Word document, we want a well-organized document. Unlike an essay, where we just have paragraph after paragraph, a really good teaching document has headings, so that a student with a learning disability can kind of compartmentalize the different areas. But someone who uses a screen reader would be a student who's blind. So there's a couple of different technologies we're going to look at today, but a blind student would use a program called, primarily there are two screen readers. One is called NVDA. It's a free open source screen reader. And the other one is called JAWS. And we have students at the college that use one or the other of these. So I'm going to show you what this document that I've made looks like using a screen reader. So this document is about accessibility, and I've given everybody two documents. I've given you, and they should look very similar. One of them is an unaccessible document about accessibility, and the other one is an accessible document about accessibility. So they both have the same thing, same contents, but it gives you the opportunity to go through the document and create it as an accessible document yourself and to compare it to the one that is accessible. So I'm taking a look at the non-accessible one, and we're going to work through it and make it accessible.
Welcome to NVDA Dialog.
So this is NVDA,
non-AC,
and I just need to change something here. So this is what a student with a screen reader would hear. This would be a student who is blind.
Page 1, Section 1. When creating an MS Word file, you need to remember a few things to make it accessible to all students. The navigation pane continuous section break graphic screenshot of the navigation checkbox section 2 column 1 of 2 column 2 of 2. The navigation pane allows us to check what the outline of.
So you can see it takes quite a while to go through a document. Now this document that I've shared is 5 or 6 pages, and if I was a sighted person and I wanted to look at this document and I wanted to say, oh, I wonder if there's anything on here about tables, I could just scroll down and look at the document and say, oh, there's something about tables. However, a student with a screen reader would end up opening up NVDA, because it's the only way they can quote unquote see the screen. They
Elements list dialog.
open this, and this would show them all the web links, and then they would go to here and Here, there are no headings, so the only way they could find if there's a table on, if there's a section about tables on this document would be to literally read the entire document until they get to that. So I'm going to close this program.
Non-ACC tips demo copy. Exit NVDA.
And the way that we can see it as a document creator, we can use this thing called the navigation pane. So if we click on the view button, and then right here we have navigation pane, and this navigation pane shows headings. So I can actually change these things that are just that are set up with bold text and enlarged text to actually have navigatable headings. So I would use that. I would use a tool called Styles. Now, before I knew about creating accessible documents, I always wondered what this part up here was. And this is actually used for a lot of different things, but today we're going to look at using it to make a document that's navigatable. So if I'm looking at a title of the document, I can click here and I can see a whole lot of different styles that are available, and I click title. That's going to apply the title style. Now this isn't a heading, so a screen reader actually can't see the title, but still setting the style to a title makes a difference for someone with a screen reader in a different way that we're not going to cover right now. But I could go to navigation pane and I can simply hit heading 1, and there's heading 1, and we can see it show up over here. Now using styles, heading 1, so I could go through the document and use headings to allow this student who uses a screen reader to navigate the document. It's also really helpful for students with cognitive disabilities because it kind of encourages us to make sections in our document. So this next section here that I'm going to talk about is about white space, so I can make that a heading 1. And then adding space after a paragraph has to do with a white space, so I can make that a heading 2. And we can see over here that it's indented, and a person with a screen reader can actually go through this and navigate really quickly and easily. So I could go through all of my headings and I can apply these things. I'm not going to finish that, it just takes more time. But it also makes it easier if you're making a big document for you to navigate around. So I'm going to close that for now. And, oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to bring that back up because I know what you're probably thinking, and that is I don't want big, ugly blue headings. I want them to look like I want them to look like. And I feel the exact same way. So when you use the default ones, they look very similar to this. So I'm going to make this normal. And what I want to do is I can format the title or the heading the way I want it to look. So maybe I want this one a little bit bigger. Maybe I want it to be 18, and I want it to be bold. And that's what I want my title to look like. So I just have my my cursor on that line, and I right-click on title, and I click Update Title to Match Selection. So now you can see here it's no longer big ugly blue. This now will apply to the whole document. So you'll be able to see it really well here. So in navigation pane, if I want this not to be blue, if I want that to be an automatic color and I like the size of that, I can just right click on heading 1. I can hit Update Heading to Match Selection, and now all of my heading 1s have changed. So I can do the same thing for here. So I can easily customize my headings to look like I want them to look like quickly and easily. And that's a tip that I found that really is helpful because often these pre-created styles aren't exactly what you want for your document. Okay, so I have how to do that right here. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about white space. So white space on a document is this area here. So the space that allows students to allows us to break up documents. So often what happens is we will end up hitting enter, 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 enter to go to a new page or just to add that space. But when a screen reader reads this, it would come to the end of this line and it would say new line, new line, new line, new line, new line, and then start reading this. So that makes an already long task even longer for a student who's using a screen reader. So we can get rid of these and we can add that extra space in a more accessible way. So what we want to do, actually I have a part of the document where I'm going to apply these two rules a little bit below. But I brought this up and it's incomplete, so if I wanted, instead of hitting a bunch of enters to go to a new page, I could click layout, breaks, and what I would want to use is a page break. Now my middle name is Shortcut, so a much easier way rather than going to layout, page breaks. When we want to add a new page break, instead of hitting enter, we hold down Control and we press enter, and it just puts a page break in for us. Now this page break is on a new line, so what I would want to do is click this, and now I have the page break here, and I can delete that, and now I have a new page there. So that's a little bit about using page breaks to create white space. And the next part I'm going to talk about is adding alt text. So alt text stands for alternative text, and the idea is when a screen reader sees an image, it can't tell what the image is, so it needs some kind of alternative way to describe that image, and that's called alt text. Now this is the area that I'm going to go through, and I'm going to make it more accessible because we have all kinds of enters. So a screen reader would read here and would just read new line, new line, new line, new line, and just start here. It would actually miss this picture altogether. And this is true with text boxes as well. And right now it would miss it primarily because it's not in line. So for accessibility purposes, we don't want to use any of these things. We want to always have our documents in line. So I'm going to fix this up a little bit. I'm going to take the extra spaces out. Again, we'd have to make that in line. And we would take these things out. Sorry, just keep getting that menu. And so it's accessible, but it's not how I want it to look. I like to have some space between here and here. I want some space there. Spacing is really important. That's way too crowded for me. So what I can actually do is I can use this tool here under paragraphs, and I can add a space after this. So if I click this one right here, I can say add space before or add space after, and you can see them shifting. And so my cursor is right here, so I would want add space after. So I've got a little bit of space there. And if I wanted more space, I can customize that, and I can click this little guy right here, and I can increase that, and I can make that space bigger. But something that I found is sometimes I will click this add space and nothing happens to my document. And that's primarily because this little box is checked. So if we uncheck that box, then we're going to have that space. And I can do an entire section if I like. So I can, actually, I like this here. So I'm going to add that space.
We have just
Hello.
a quick question. What view are you using right now to show the spacing?
Yes, so there is on the button right here called Hide Show, and it's showing paragraph markers. So a really easy way to there's a fast way to do that, and if you hold Control Shift and then you hit 8, you can see them. You don't even have to go to the menu. So that's Control Shift at the same time, and then 8 on the number board. or not on the number pad, just on the regular keyboard area. You can think of it as Control asterisk, because so to get the asterisk you'd have to hit the space or shift, so Control Shift asterisk turns it on and off. That's a really good question, thank you. So I'm going to highlight this and I can apply it to the whole document. And I want to make sure that I have that off. And now I have some nice spaces in there. I can, if I don't want this always right aligned, I can left align it or center it. And if you'll remember, the original, I had this over here. So, and I had it along with the text. So normally I would click this and I would click wrapping and I would move it wherever I want it. But in order to keep it in line, and if I want this off to the right, I can just highlight those two. I can click columns, and if I make it 2 columns, then I have it the way I want it to look. So when I turn that off, Shift Control 8, so that looks a lot more like what I want it to look like. I want a little more space there. So I'm going to customize that one. There we go. So I haven't talked about alt text yet, but this is these rules up here being applied. Now that seems like it might be more work than usual, but really it's just a different way to work. And something that I found is if you go to a new document, when you start a new document, if you go into this little paragraph marker, and I'm set this up beforehand, I want this to be 12. Oops, auto. I want that to be 12. And I uncheck that, and that will apply to the rest of the document. So that makes creating that document, those spaces between paragraphs, a little bit better. Now, something that is nice to know, let's just say I wanted a new line here, and I didn't want that space. If I hold down Shift, it's called a soft carriage return, and then I don't have that space because sometimes I want that space and sometimes I don't. So just to revisit that, if I hit Enter, I have the space that I've added because it's a paragraph marker. And if I don't want that paragraph, I would hold Shift down, hit Enter, and now you can see it looks a little bit different. And I can add that there. So now, alt text, we would right click, and you want to do this to every picture on your document. So you would click Edit Alt Text. If you're using an older version of Office, you won't see this in the menu. You'll actually have to go into Format Picture, and then it would be in this document here. You would see Alt Text. But in Office 365, which would be the same on a Mac or a PC, they've made it much easier, and I can click this and I can see my alt text there. So I have a screenshot of an image, context menu. So it's very tempting to say, if it's a picture, to say it's an image of a screenshot, or it's an image of a man working on construction. We don't need that because the screen reader actually says that it's an image already. And you'll notice this kind of neat little generate description for me tool. So I'm going to click that, and it actually created an auto description. It uses artificial intelligence, and it has quite a ways to go because somehow it thinks that's a cell phone. Now, it's not uncommon to put like the Niagara College logo at the beginning of a document. So that logo doesn't add value to your content. It's a decorative instrument that is labeling, but as far as accessibility, what we could do there is we would click, if we had the Niagara College logo, for example, or an image that was just a pretty picture that we wanted to add to make our document more pleasant for everybody. We don't need a screen reader to read that, so we could click Mark as Decorative. So what's going to happen is the screen reader is actually going to bypass this like it never even existed. And as you recall, when we click this and we use text wrapping, it will bypass it, but that's not a guarantee, and that's not a great way to make it not readable for a screen reader. The best way to do it is to click this Mark as Decorative. So then we have another one here, and if I was going to write a screen description for this, I would say, because it's a screenshot of ... and I would put whatever that screenshot is. Next thing I'm going to talk about are hyperlinks. So this is often what happens. Is there a question?
Yes, there is, Jim. Can we download the free NVDA software to use as we develop our materials? This way we could run our docs through it to hear it as a student would hear it.
Yeah, you can. In fact, that's a great thing to do. NVDA takes a little bit of knowledge to run. And so using this is a good start, but if you want to download it, you would just say NVDA screen reader. You would Google that in, and it would allow you to hear what the teacher or a student who is blind hears. Now, at the college currently, we have 2 students who use screen readers that are fully have no vision, and so unless you have one of those students in your class. Using NVDA is a little bit of an overkill, but if you follow these rules, then you'll get it. You'll still get it right, but you won't have to proofread it. But yeah, that's great. And if you want, I have a great little handout that I found on the web that has shortcuts about how to use NVDA, so you have an idea what you're doing, and I can share that with Dana, and she can distribute it if you'd like. So great question, thank you. So this here is what usually we end up with when we bring a hyperlink or a website into a document. And to make it more accessible, we might go, oh, I'll just say what it is. Alt text techniques. So that is a little more accessible, but as you remember from the beginning, when a student with a screen reader would use this, they actually can list all of the links and then go to them immediately without having the context of what is there. So what we would actually want to do is we would right click on this, and we're going to see an edit hyperlink button. And this here is the actual address, and this is what it's going to show on the screen. So I can paste that in or type whatever I like in there. In fact, I would go for more context. And now it looks, actually that's not a video. So edit, just take the video out of there. The next one is a video. So when we grab something from YouTube, usually the hyperlink isn't really helpful to anyone to know what it is. So the easiest way that I found is if we go to that hyperlink And when we are going to grab it, we most YouTube videos have a title here, so we could just grab that. And we right-click, edit, right here at the top, and this, oops, made a mistake there. My apologies. There we go. So now it's a little bit longer, but it actually means something to every student. So that helps it be a little better. Gives students a little more knowledge about what it's going to go to. And this not only helps students who are using screen readers, but it also helps students with cognitive disabilities because it's more explicit. And the more explicit we are in a document, the easier it is to understand. Now, sometimes we'll want to just add a link to text that we already have instead of going the other way. Is that a question?
Hi, Jim. We just have a question about, can we add QRs to the link as well?
QRs. If you had a QR, I am actually a big fan of QR. So for those who aren't familiar with QR, those are those squares with all those weird dots, and you hold up your phone and it'll go there automatically. So those are pretty cool, but again, those are not terribly accessible for a screen reader, but we can actually tag an image as well. So you could have it as a QR code, and then you could actually add a link to a picture, and you could actually put the web page in there so that it would also be clickable for people who don't have a phone, or for people who are using the document digitally. They can, with a screen reader, they can go there as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Super. So if I wanted to make this text a hyperlink, I could right-click on it, and we don't have that edit hyperlink thing here. So we use this tool down here called link, and you can actually link to all kinds of things, but the easiest thing to do is just click on the link button and then put the web page in there. Here's Niagara College. I've done this a couple of times as practice, and now that's a hyperlink people can go to. Now, sometimes people are a little hesitant to actually do hyperlinks this way because they're like, what if the link doesn't work and a student can't get there? They can't copy and paste that. So for people who are anxious about that or don't feel that maybe this is the best way for everybody, an alternative or a workaround for that would be to take this text as well as the link, and we can actually just go into, always have trouble finding this one, insert, references, there it is. So we can click insert footnote, and we could put what that is. Oops. You'd probably want it like that, and then you could insert the actual link as well. So then people who feel anxious that that's not serving everybody well, that's another way to do that. So we're going to talk about tables a little bit. So here are some rules to follow when you make tables accessible. Merging cells. So when we merge a cell, it's when we would have two cells and we would cause them to merge together like that. That's really difficult for screen readers. And sometimes it can be difficult for people with cognitive disabilities to kind of evaluate that. So simple tables are better. And if you have a table that you just has to have merged cells, then maybe some creative ways to delineate that information would be better. We don't want to use the draw erase tools. When we insert a table, we want to insert using this tool here rather than drawing them. And styles don't work inside here. Actually, on that point, if I forgot to mention, if you're creating something and you actually, instead of having, let me see, sorry, no. So instead of having add alt text here, if you were like, oh, I'll just turn this into a heading, that'll work. Unfortunately, it doesn't work as far as screen readers go. So it always has to be on its own line. In fact, I've prepared tests for students with disabilities, and I'll actually have the text question 1, 5 marks as the title, and then I'll have the question underneath it so that a student with a screen reader can jump from one question to another question. And if they, if a sighted person is looking at a question and they're like, I don't want to do that question, I'll do that question after I do something else to build my confidence, then it makes it easier for them to jump around from question to question. So the last thing about tables is after we create a table, we want to go into the options. So we select the whole table, we right click and we go to table properties. And we want to make sure that that's left aligned and that it's not wrapped. So we want that to be none. So click both of those. For row, we want to unclick this one and click this one. It default makes it that way, but we want it the opposite way. And then we can add alt text in here as well. So this particular table, I might write cost. And you'll notice in here, I didn't put it in title, I put it in description. And when you are making something along this line, what'll happen is the screen reader will say long description available, and that the person who's blind will choose if they want to hear that or not, so that it makes things a little shorter. Oops, I actually want, and then finally for this table has a heading row. Some tables will have a heading row and a heading column. So we would go into layout, table design, and I would make sure I have a heading row. And that way the screen reader will actually say item, tool 1, cost, $10, cost with tax, $10.13. Row 1, or a column 1, row 2, item, tool 2, and that's kind of how it reads. So I'm actually going to uncheck that because I want some challenges to be there for when we look at the checker, because we're going to take a look at the checker. We have about 15 minutes left. So this is how to do that table stuff. And now sometimes when you are creating a document and you go back and you edit it, you'll end up with stuff like this, where there's a big space and you're like, oh, I wish that was there. Sometimes that can be caused because we have a page break in there. So we can just go and delete that page break and we get that back the way we were hoping to have it originally. I don't know how many of you have math in your courses, but if you're someone who doesn't use math in your course, this is still really helpful. And if you're someone who doesn't use math in your courses, but you know someone who uses math in your courses, this is really great information to spread around the community, because math by default is really inaccessible. And it also doesn't just affect people who are using screen readers, but people who have cognitive disabilities will sometimes have a disability that affects their reading of anything. So sometimes there are disabilities, it used to be called dyslexia, where letters swap, like you might see a 9 instead of a 6, or sometimes words move when you read them, or you might think that it's 53, but it's really 35. So being able to have a screen reader, or actually this tool up here, are you able to see this toolbar at the top?
Yes, we can see it.
Super. So this is a toolbar called Read and Write, and this is used primarily by people who have cognitive reading disabilities, and we can actually read this text out loud. So this would be for any student who has a letter of accommodation with text to speech at all, or read and write you might see on there, or Kurzweil. Those are some keywords that basically mean something that will read text back to them. So when I show you this, you're going to see words highlighted, and there's going to be a lag because we're doing it through video, but you'll get the idea.
Using the MIS equation editor not accessible.
So this is the Microsoft equation editor, and it is really disappointing that Microsoft hasn't made their math accessible, but it's really, really not accessible. So if I was going to enter math, I might hit insert, and I might hit equation editor, and I might enter math here. So here's an integral. Sorry, things are lagging right now. But if you've ever done this before, you know that it takes a long time to enter math. And the solution that I'm going to show you really speeds things up, and it makes it accessible. So often when we enter math, we use people have a tendency to use the equation editor, which is unfortunately not accessible, or sometimes they'll write it out and then take a picture of it. This as well is not accessible to a screen reader or a regular reading program, text to speech, and it's really not that accessible to students at all, because this isn't my handwriting. My handwriting would be definitely hard to see. But if you're going to enter something like this, you would then want to make sure you added alt text, and I just put alt text not accessible, or not accessible math. But if I was going to enter this, I would have to go x, or x plus 3 close bracket, and maybe I'll write out the word squared equals, oops, equals 4. Oops. Equals 4. Hit it again. There we go. So now I have a screen reader read this.
Writing it out and take x plus 3 squared equals 4.
So I did my best, but if someone was blind, they would think that squared, or 3 is squared, not the entire equation. And I mean, you could go ahead and type that out more explicitly, but there's a better way. The other way that sometimes people will get math into a document is they'll copy it from a web page. And because it's a web page, primarily it's got some accessibility built in. This is a chemistry equation that I got from Khan Academy. And if we right click and go to alt text, I can see that I have some pretty good alt text there, but it's really not that great to listen to. It's kind of confusing, to be honest. So the best solution that I found, and it's a solution, there are other solutions, but the easiest, best one that I found is made by a company called TextHelp, which is also the company that makes this tool up here called Read and Write. So the tool is called Equatio. And I'm just going to open that up for a quick little preview, or a quick little look at it. So what it does is it opens up a toolbar at the bottom. Right here, and it right now, it's free for everybody during the pandemic. And we can click here. You would go to options, or you would sign in with your Niagara College credentials, and then you would have a full-fledged version at this point. So if I wanted to make math right here, I could click this equation editor, and I can just do my math. And I'm going to insert it. So I'm going to do this one again. So I can just x, and then I'm going to type the word plus. Oh, there it is. Plus 3 squared equals 4. So that's a little bit easier. And I can just hit insert math, and it's going to go wherever my cursor is. And it's actually a picture with alt text that is absolutely fantastic. So that's not something that I would write. That's a little complicated unless I was going to write it in LaTeX, which is another story altogether. But when we have the screen reader read it,
It is currently free for open paren x plus 3 close paren squared equals 4. Ms. Word Accessibility Checker. Use the accessibility.
so what's really cool about this too is if I have an equation that I've created with Equatio, I can double click it and I can edit it. And there's some ways that we can go ahead and we can make a second line, and we can cross things out if we're teaching, making a math thing where we want to cross something out. And so it's pretty powerful. If you like the look of this, you can contact me and I can show you the ropes. And I highly recommend it for anybody who's doing math. It's so much better than using the equation editor. Now, finally, we have an accessibility checker that's built into Microsoft Word. So it's a pretty cool tool, and you get to it by going to File, Info, Inspect Document, and Check Accessibility. So I'm going to click. Actually, before I do that, one of the challenges is that to the accessibility checker is that it doesn't check everything. So it doesn't check problems like contrast issues. So that's red on black, and to a lot of people that looks great, but people who are who have low vision, that's really hard to see. Or someone who's colorblind, if you're using the wrong colors, again, hard to see. So unuseful alt text, if you type in some text that's not very descriptive, then it can't check that because it doesn't know what it says. And then if you use color to indicate the importance of something, again, a screen reader won't be able to tell a student that right off the bat. Maybe a really experienced person with a screen reader might be able to figure that out, but again, it's not right off the bat. However, what's kind of cool is I should actually change this to some versions of it will not, because I had a really great surprise. I checked my document and found that the checker has improved since last time I looked at it. So if I go to File, Info, right here I have Inspect Document, Check for Issues, Check Accessibility, and it gives me a list of stuff. And so remember that tool or that header that I had, or the header row that I left out, it actually is bringing that to my attention. So what's really cool about this newer one is I can actually go, oh, use first row, that's what I want. And now it's been applied. Hard to read text, this is what I was really surprised about. It actually found that. So that's pretty cool. So I don't even have to leave. I can go format color, and I can just make that automatic. It didn't catch this one, but spelling, Oh, this is the other one I was really pleased with. So suggested alternative text, when I click here, it takes me to that picture. And if I click here, it says verify description. So what happened is it sees that it was generated automatically, and it recognizes that its AI isn't always fantastic, so it brings that to your attention. So I could put something useful there, or something more accurate. Where was that? There we go. And see, it went away because it got rid of that. So one way, so if you go ahead and you do your best to work with the accessibility techniques that I've shown you here, you can actually, with your knowledge and wisdom of these techniques, as well as with the help of the accessibility checker, you can make a very accessible, if not perfectly accessible document. The last thing I wanted to show about this here is when we, there are times when we add pictures to a document. This might be a picture in a lab manual maybe that you might make. And if I look at this, this is the generated description. So even a student who isn't using a screen reader, if a student was using something like this and the student had a description of this kind of complicated image, that would be really helpful for not only people who use screen readers, but people who have cognitive disabilities, because it will add clarification to things that are sometimes really useful, but really difficult if you're not familiar. So I am out of time and I'm out of document. So at the bottom there are some resources that I shared, including the Equatio. And again, if anybody is interested in learning more about that Equatio, you can feel free to contact me. If you have documents that you would like to make accessible, I can work with you on making that accessible. I prefer to teach people how to fish rather than just to give them a fish. So if you have a document that you know, you're like, I'd love to make this accessible and I've done my best, maybe you could bring me up on Teams and say, hey Jim, can we take a look at this document together? And I would happily feel it actually even a privilege to help you figure out where it can be more accessible or celebrate with your completely accessible document.